Good evening and welcome.
Good
Um,
evening and welcome.
it's Rolly here for Creative Check-In. Just Wednesday evening. It's the thing we do here on this channel at this time. So it's 8 o'clock here in Dublin, and it's time for us to have a little watch and a think um, about creativity. Uh, if you can let me know where you're watching from, that'd be cool. And if there's anything that you're wanting to process and think through, stick it in the chat, and I'll see if I've got a word of wisdom or an insight or a thought that will help with that. Oh, my screen over here is turned off. Technical issues, and also starting slightly late because the um, video was unlisted, so no one can see it. Yeah, one of the things that I've been processing today, and interestingly, I was actually having a talk with one of the creatives who I worked with. Very talented writer, multidisciplined. He's got loads of ideas and lots of things you think do. And we ended up talking about this subject for a little while. And at the moment, there's a huge debate going on globally, but also in the creative world about AI. And I think a lot of people are arguing about the fact that whether AI can produce art or produce anything worthwhile. Some people are super against AI. Some people are super for AI. But the one thing that I'm not really thinking about, because certainly with the way I make music, is I've intentionally chosen to go down hardware electronic music route so that I'm not looking at a computer screen, because I genuinely want to turn my back on it. And I mean it in a physical way, as in I literally turn my chair around and I work over here. And that's come out of years of being sat in front of a computer screen for work and teaching people to use these tools, and whether it's Logic or Ableton Live, or it's Final Cut Pro, or I used to work for Apple, so all of the tools that are on the Mac. And it's not so. It's about going, how can I have some headspace when I'm going to make music? But the way in which I'm embracing AI is to do exactly that, to give me headspace so I can get into the flow. Like, I'm not using it to write my tracks. I'm not using it to choose like the colors of the fonts I use. I'm not using it to process any effects or like using AI mastering tools. I'll send it to a friend who's got a great ear, nice tools, and ask them to do that for me in person on their beautiful mastering hardware. But what I have been doing, what I've spent, the past kind of couple of days doing, is building an operating system in Claude Code that can help me run my business, help me to stay on top of my to-do list. It can book meetings. It can reply to emails. Now, I'm telling it what to say in the email, but it just means that I'm not jumping between multiple windows and going, well, what's in this email? What's in this calendar? What's in this thing? And they're all the things that I find a little bit joyless. And I find it hard to stay on top of sometimes. Whereas it's much easier with what I'm building out to stop, to keep me in my flow, to keep me moving, to keep me being energized and just enjoying what I'm up to. And I think that's important, because sometimes when I do come and sit down in the studio, and maybe you've been there before, you've set aside a certain amount of time, you still have a bit of energy left from the day, or you're doing it early in the morning and you're going, I'm going to go and do some creative work now. And for me, I sometimes feel guilty because I'm going, well, I haven't done this and I haven't replied to that person. I haven't sent this email. I haven't pulled out all my invoices for the month and put them in a folder for my accountant. And I start to think through all the things that I could be doing, because yes, I've set aside some time in the calendar, and maybe there's this time of my day that family understand that this is the thing that I'm going to do. But there's still this sense of guilt about stepping away and doing that creative work that's going to set me alight, going to get me into a flow and help me to feel really excited. So it's there's tabs that are still open in my head with all the things that I've got to do, and some of them just flit away into the wind until somebody reminds me, "Hey, have you done that thing?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't done that thing." And I do think that's part of my ADHD brain is I can only handle so much at one time in my head. And I think we probably all can do that. I think certainly as we're getting older, there's less and less cognitive power there. But that's not an excuse. But it is something that I can offload somewhere else. And that's really what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build a system that suits the way I work. Because I've said this before, and about the fact that I think I've gone through every type of kind of productivity hack or system to try and get to a zero inbox or color code my calendar so that it's all lined up. But I know for myself that I really need to work with the energy that I have at any part of the day or time of the year. I need to work with my energy as opposed to, it's not a time management issue. So I've talked about that before. But I really do think that, a lot of the people I talk to are not getting to their work, not because AI is doing it for them, but because they've got so many other things that get in the way. There's so many hurdles. There's so many blockages. Even Niall, who was he was kind of commenting on the live stream, did a week. Like he messaged me this week going, "Oh, my head is completely fried with mail issues, and like I moved my server over, and like all these things aren't syncing up. What am I going to do?" And I was like, "Well, hopefully you clear that up because it's blocking him from getting on with his creative work. There's a technical barrier there that means that the basics of just being able to have a website and send and receive emails isn't working right now." So sometimes it's things like that get in the way. And I can just imagine that that's just taking up all of the brains and all of the tabs in his brain. And because he's onto the providers, he's onto Apple, he's onto loads of different people, like trying to get help. And it's too much to then try and turn around and grab your camera and do something creative and artistic. And because you've used up your energy on something that's frustrating. And now you're trying to get down to something that you want it to be joyful, you want it to be fulfilling, you want to get into a sense of flow. So for me, like hand up, like I regularly use AI, but just to cut out the really mundane, boring things. So even on my YouTube videos, I love putting in the chapter markers, but I don't go through the video and take note of them. I used to do that, but now I just tell Claude to look at the transcript and the timestamps and boil it down to, excuse me, a handful of meaningful chapter markers. Because I just think that when you're watching a video, it's more helpful to be able to skip between different pieces. And that's something that used to take me maybe 10, 15 minutes. Now, I literally just tell Claude what to do, copy and paste the results, and double check that they line up. It's pretty straightforward. But there's loads of ways in which I'm putting that to work to help me get into the flow, And I kind of showed a picture last week of me saying, well, I'm kind of building a pit crew. And it really is like that idea that there's a team around you. And like my business isn't making loads of money at the moment, so I'm not in a position to hire an assistant or a PA or somebody to edit my videos. But down the road, that is what I can do. But right now, I can delegate to Claude to do some of this more basic work. Now, I also get that there's a much bigger question out there as well, because like I do genuinely think that like it's very liberal access for everybody to get to AI right now and to ask questions and use it. But I do think that over time that will change. One, it'll become, I think in general, it'll become democratized. But then I also think that as the power, crunch, whether that's for actual electricity or just processing power, that will continue to scale exponentially, and us mere mortals will get priced out of using basic AI. So I do think that in time I'll have to run my own AI on my computer, and it'll be a much smaller model than the big Gemini, Groks, ChatGPT, or Claudes that we're using at the moment. But I get that. At the moment, I'm getting by on a €20 a month subscription, and it handles all the things I can throw at it right now. So I am aware that there's a bigger piece at work. But also, I think on the flip side of the AI conversation is the fact that it is being used as a sort of tool to for us to be afraid of what's it going to do to the world, what's it going to do to the world of work. And lots of those things that I said, like I could delegate this to somebody and pay them, and I can also ask Claude to do it. So what would I rather do? I'd much rather pay somebody as a collaborator who is able to work alongside me, who's able to understand me, and I would still keep the most basic kind of tasks delegated, and I think back even a few years, like some of the things that we take for granted now were really hard work. And certainly back when I started using the internet, like there was no graphical interfaces. It was all just prompts on a command line. And it was really hard to find information. So the likes of Google, all that stuff being so much easier to access has changed over time. And I think we'll continue to see massive changes. I think this is a huge kind of shift that we're getting to. But what I really want to do is to actually help people through this process, either through the process of figuring out how their art exists in a world that's full of AI. And I really believe that with how quickly we can all spot AI slop, the value of human art, human music, human writing is all going to exponentially increase. I've been going to more and more live gigs and seeing somebody playing an instrument, interacting with the crowd, with each other, the other collaborators on stage. It's still fascinating and wonderful and moving and emotive. And I just think that that's really wonderful connecting place for people to be. So what I've done is this idea of building a laboratory to test out what I can use, what helps me, what smoothens things out, but then also what allows me to get back to my art. So how do I get rid of the tabs that are open, the things that drain my battery? How can I offset that so that I've got time and space and energy to work on my craft, to work on my music, to work on anything creative and artistic, and also to be there to help you, because ultimately that's why I'm here. I'm here to say that I want to help you. I want to help creatives to make headspace, close tabs, so that they're available to show up in front of their canvas in front of their piano with their pen out, whatever that looks like for you. So at the moment, I'm looking to work with kind of 4 or 5 people. And what I've really been thinking about recently is the idea of what would it look like to work together for a year? I've done quite a few kind of one-off interactions with people, and they've gone well. And sometimes it's turned into 3, 4, 5 of them. But I do think that at the stage we are at life, and particularly dealing with anyone who's neurodiverse, and also the stories you've been told, there's an awful lot to unpack. So seeing each other once a month, working together in like kind of body doubling sessions like parallel play, and continue to see the work roll out, I think it takes time. That's the one thing that I've been learning working with all these people. It's how my thinking has evolved. And just think that it's really important to be there. And it's more like a partnership. It's a kind of a mastery partnership, like an executive producer in a music studio, there to go, hey, here's a suggestion, here's an idea, and also to create a little bit of accountability and connection. So if that's something that you'd like to find out more about, there's a link in the description. Probably the best thing to do is to fill in the quiz. It's a creative locator quiz, and it'll help you to figure out maybe what areas are keeping you stuck and stumped at the moment. And that'll give us a great place to start off a conversation on how can we help. So if you fill in the quiz, I'll get back to you with a personalized response on what you can do right now to help you kind of grow and get better and make things smooth for you and help you to get back to zero and get some work done. All right. That's my thoughts on AI and art. As of now, as of the middle of March 2026, that may change over time. My opinions on AI have been changing all the time, and particularly when I've been watching it, changing. No comments. Nobody's chimed in. So if you're watching, just there's a link in the description for the quiz, but also if you want to put in the comments where you're watching it from, what your thoughts are on AI, whether you're using it for admin stuff, not touching it at all. I did see somebody saying that, like, even if there's a blank page, even just throwing something quickly into ChatGPT to start the process is a way to kind of get the ball rolling. But please just let me know what you're thinking about AI, what's important in the conversation, and what have I left out? Like, what else do I need to think about and process? Love to hear from you. All right, we're 22 minutes in. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks so much for those who showed up, and we'll catch you again next week. All right, and don't forget the most important bit: to stay creative.